are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my co-host, the Rutgers homer himself, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, sir.
That's a new one. I didn't think I was going to get called a Rutgers homer, but we are 2-0. Both of my bets on them, they've hit. So they're about to be 3-0.
You did tweet,
yes,
or X.
I posted.
You sent 3 texts out about Rutgers. So you triple X'd. A lot like Mel Tucker did, apparently, as he's been suspended. I mean, come on. Listen, Mel Tucker's been suspended. For people who don't know, Mel Tucker and Michigan State technically have suspended him without pay following an investigation. Brett McMurphy reported that he got fired, and then Michigan State said, yeah, we did technically want to fire him, but then through the process, we wanted to suspend him. So I don't blame Brett McMurphy in that at all. But Mel Tucker's been fired or suspended. Mainly, Joe, this does not look good for him.
No, and it comes at a timely situation. We're going to get into this for a little bit. Probably not going to be a super in-depth breakdown on it because it's an ongoing investigation. It's still in a way alleged until he gets fired and that Title IX investigation is completed. We don't know for certain what the outcome of it's going to be. But I mean, right now it doesn't look good. They were probably looking for some cause to let him go. There's clearly a lack of institutional control, not only from guys leaving, the fight that broke out, or not institutional control is not the best way to put it.
Yeah, because lack of institutional control is multiple programs, just so we're,
Yes. Let me rephrase. He has a lack of control over himself. He's a bad coach. He doesn't treat his staff very well. He doesn't treat his players very well. And everything has caught up to him to this point where he made a horrible, horrible action. If it is true, allegedly, if it is true, it is just a terrible, terrible action that he is being accused of.
In our society, men are painted into a corner of sexual harassment. And what normally happens is that the general public believes what is being reported by the victim as truth and gospel without anything going on. Here is the truth. Number one, we need to let due process play out. Okay? Due process has to play out here. Like, we cannot just say that he was doing something allegedly, even though he admitted to the act of doing something, but he said it was consensual.
Right. So once we know the outcome of this, we're going to really know. But it seems like they're trending towards firing him, though. That's the thing is,
it does feel that way. But at the same time, you do have a little bit of a he said, she said type of scenario. She said the victim said that she did not know. Mel Tucker said, we've done it multiple times. Okay. With her, even texting me back and, calling me back. The bottom line is, okay, when you're a public figure, you can't do things like this. You can't, there's clauses and stuff like this. It doesn't matter. They can fire him now if they wanted to, because, adultery is in a lot of people's contracts if you get caught doing it. So I think there's a lot more going on with this Mel Tucker thing than they're leading on. So we'll see. That's not the only thing we're talking about. I can't believe I'm saying it. Because Texas fans have been so just gracious and humble about their win over Alabama. But Alabama, man, they do not look offensively. They have issues, serious issues.
Yeah, and they're going to need to figure out what they're going to do the rest of the season, because like right now, if that is going to be the week-to-week offensive approach and game plan, and if Jalen Milroe is the guy that they're going to use, they're not going to win more than 10 games. This might be a 3-loss season if they continue to play like that. They can't make the mistakes that they did, have the turnovers that they did, have the poor offensive line play that they did. But as annoying as Texas fans are right now, that team looked great. That team did everything that they needed to do in week 2 to get the win. And if they continue to do that, man, I don't see a reason why that they don't win the Big 12.
I don't think that they look great. But I don't. So here's the question that we're going to have here, Joe. Did Texas look great, or did Alabama look that bad? That's the question that I think we need to be asking ourselves here.
So I think that once we get into talking about this game and the Texas A&M game, which we're going to get to, here's where I think that this is going to be an interesting conversation, because I feel like Texas is that good and Texas A&M is that bad. And I think you disagree with me on the
No, I think Texas is here's what people hear. Does Texas have talent? We agreed on this last week. Yeah, they have talent. They have talent in a lot of places. They had talent last year when they lost by a point to Alabama. Doesn't mean that they're the most talented team out there. Or that Bama is down.
Yes.
Bama is down. That is not the Bama team that we're used to seeing. If you believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that is the Bama team that you're used to seeing, you're wrong.
No, and I even said that after the game that this team clearly has regressed, and we're going to unpack what some of those holes are that clearly showed up into this game. But my whole point here is that I think from both of these games, there's two outcomes that can be depicted of, can Miami be as good as they looked in this game? I think that they took advantage of a poorly coached. No, I'm talking about.
Oh,
I'm saying that Miami, I think, was a matter of circumstance of running into a bad Texas A&M team that helped them look really good. And there's some really good positives that we're going to talk about, that why Miami deserves to be ranked and what their outlook is. But they dominated Texas A&M because Texas A&M looked helpless at times. The flip side of that, I think that Alabama showed some signs of life despite some of their issues that kept them into the game. But Texas is so explosive on offense. That was why they pulled away at the end of the game. And I think that for the weak schedule that they're going to face in the Big 12, look, let's be real, it's not exactly a really hard schedule. They can finish with the best record in the Big 12 at the end of the year.
Here's the truth. You ready for the outright truth?
Yes.
Who are the teams that have spent the most money in recruiting and the transfer portal?
Miami and Texas.
And Florida State. Florida State spent a crap load of money in the portal. Joe, I think, and now with Dion being 2-0, we're going to have to start asking some of these coaches, like, hey, man, I know that you need to get high school players, and I understand that. Joe, I am past this, let's get 25, 30 high school players and not attack the portal. I don't think that that's the right way to do things. Not anymore. Adonai Mitchell is still running on Alabama.
There is a lot of proof after only 2 weeks of football that the formula for success is attack the portal. And I think that there's going to be a number of teams.
Mel Tucker.
Well, he didn't do either thing. He didn't recruit high school guys, and he
had 10 wins.
Yeah.
He had 27 transfers.
And then he didn't do it after that. He stopped. They haven't done it. More guys have left. Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, he got his $30 million. He's okay.
Yeah, he's chilling.
Yeah. All right, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Texas A&M and Miami. Miami fans already in the chat asking about if you're going to give Van Dyke an apology. And no,
I already said I was wrong on Twitter. I'm not apologizing for for saying that Sweat on Texas was bad. I still don't think he's very good. I did say on Twitter.
I'm glad that my take hit in reference to Xavier Worthy.
Yes, that did hit, and we're going to talk about that.
That man can't catch, but that man, he dropped a wide open touchdown.
He did have a beautiful catch, though. That was dropped in the bucket. Like when he makes catches,
ball was in the air, did you think you were like, oh shit?
Oh, I didn't think he was going to come down with it. That was why the play is even more spectacular, is that he made the catch. But when we talk about Miami, I promise everyone this. I did it on my channel. I did it on Twitter. I will give Tyler Van Dyke his roses for his performance. That's the best game of his career. Like, who could have predicted he was going to play that? His amazing performance.
Well, you probably should have if you thought that their offensive line was that good. You did say that you thought that they were that good.
Right. That's the irony of the situation, is that you pull the one quote, the one I said that I didn't like Tyler Van Dyke, but if you listen to the whole segment and the whole preview, and if you listen to me the whole offseason, I've said that Leonard Taylor's a first-round draft pick. I said Cam Kitchens is a first-round draft pick. I said that they've got some underrated receivers. I said Francis Malco is the best freshman offensive lineman in the country. Like, I said all the things that happened in this game, but nobody wanted to listen to any of that. But I'll give Tyler Van Dyke his due.
Let me say this now. Let me say this.
Okay.
When you go back, before we get into this, when you go back and watch it, A&M's defensive line was not the issue.
No, Miami's O-line was just that good.
No, Joe, they had 27 pressures. 27 pressures on, excuse me, not 27. 17 pressures on 30 attempts.
I didn't know that. It didn't look like that from the game. When we watched the game, it didn't feel like that.
But that is very indicative of what Tyler Van Dyke did. So We'll see. All right, let's get rolling. Everybody do us a favor by hitting the like and share to all of those social media groups, share to all of those social media pages. If you're listening to us on YouTube, like, subscribe, and notification bell wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're watching us on Fubo TV, welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag. Don't go anywhere. We're back next. We got a lot to break down. Stay with us. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. We're back.
Dude, we have to wait till we're taking that out of the show. I'm not. I can't listen to that anymore. Especially after last week.
Is Texas back?
It was week 2. I'm high on them.
I was the one in pre-production saying everybody needs to calm down. It's week 2, and you were like, and now you're going to come out here and use my take against me.
I'm not using it against you. All I'm saying is we're going to talk about this game and the outlook, but we can't immediately jump to the end of the season. Okay, that's all I'm going to say.
We'll get to that game in just a minute. Let's just talk about this very quickly. Joe, look at this. This is making the rounds. So Mel Tucker is suspended without pay. Okay. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is just going around Twitter. If I am wrong, I apologize.
It has been reshared in articles that I've read as well. It has been placed in a bunch of articles. So this has definitely been resurfaced, that this is the victim, and she has a professional relationship with the team, though.
Okay, so let me just read this. It says, we are excited to welcome Brenda Tracy back to our campus as our honorary captain for Saturday's spring game. # set the expectation, and to whatever this nonprofit set the expectation, which is a nonprofit. This is a horrible look, Joe. 2022 spring game with Mel Tucker and the victim right here. Like that does not look good. That does not look good at all. The
backstory is she had a professional role with the team. And I don't know if you remember from when you played or not, but when I played, we had somebody, I forget what his name was, but they would come and meet with us at the beginning of the season and during the off season. And they would talk a lot about, and coach up young guys on how to handle yourself in situations.
Yeah. Like a counselor, a counselor or whatever it was, but whatever
it was very driven on recognizing situations of sexual assault and rape and how to help protect people in public and be a good role model. And if you see somebody in an uncomfortable situation, and I'm sure that was what her role was, very similar to helping coach up the Michigan State guys.
Meanwhile,
she herself was a victim, and the allegation against him is very serious, and it's an allegation. And I I don't want to dive too deep on the allegation until it's finalized. What I will say is him as a head coach, it's just so clear that he took the money and then has made no effort to make any progression. Like that, he's an egotist. He kept all that money that he could have given to his staff as even the
So
biggest
that's where I
proof of
was
that.
going. That's where I was going with. This isn't the first thing that's happened.
Right.
Right. So the first thing that I thought about when this came out this weekend, Pete Thamel broke the story yesterday, was the first thing, Joe, that I have written down was, remember, he was given the money and was supposed to delegate it to his staff and kept it for himself.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And then now you have this. Look, giving coaches like Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, Brian Kelly, hell, I'll even throw Sark in there now. Giving a guy like Sark, Ryan Day, Jim Harbaugh, Lincoln Riley, even Dabo, giving someone that kind of contract, okay, is warranted. What did he do to warrant that? Now,
it was because he was sought after by other teams. That's literally what got him
he
the
was
contract.
sought after. It was LSU. So if you remember during the coaching hire, LSU was the one floating around the 10 and a half, 11 million. That's where that came from when they fired Orgeron. I promise you it is.
Mm-hmm.
They talked to Mel Tucker about it. They talked to Mel Tucker. They said they didn't. That's a bold-faced lie. I know that they did talk to Mel Tucker and his brass about taking over LSU. Thank God they didn't. And they went with very conservative Brian Kelly, okay? Maybe a little too conservative to some extent. Talk to Lincoln Riley. Talk to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I just think that Mel Tucker has shown that he can be an asshole, but here's how I've always saw cases like this. If you want to check my record, you can go to the Darius Guy stuff, things that LSU has gone through in the past. You got to let due process play out here.
Yes.
Like, I do not want to convict him off of an article that we read because there were some quotes in there. And I want to tell you something. The simple nature that they didn't fire him and suspended him without pay, there's something that's going on there that I don't think that people want to, people are like, yeah. Now, in the article I read, they said that they've known this for about 6 months. Like, this isn't anything new. Like, this allegation isn't new. Why not take care of this in the middle? Why are you taking care of this 2 weeks into the season? Why?
The timing of it's terrible, and let
me tell you why. You know why? Because Pete Thamel went out there yesterday and said sources. That's why.
Yes. They let this information, it's now public, and this is going to be under a microscope for the rest of the year. And it really sucks for the Michigan State players. The crazy thing is they're allowed to hop in the portal if he does end up getting fired. If he does end up getting fired. And that's kind of why you
hop in the portal now. I read the article from On 3 that now
even if he's suspended, they're allowed to.
Let me say this. Let me just say this.
Okay.
On 3 reported that. I don't know that. Now I read that from them, but they, have been sketchy. So at times. Right. So I'm gonna leave that one alone. I don't know. You're right.
But as you've said, until there is a final decision and the Title IX investigation has been completed, I don't want to speak on the allegations. They are pretty terrible if there is truth to them. And he deserves to be fired if they are true. But again, the big key thing here that you said a second ago, it has been nothing but downhill since he got that extension. And there has been nothing but problems with the contract of him not dispersing the money. The fight that happened against Michigan. You've got a lack of control of your players and guys hopping in the portal right after the spring. And 2 of your best players, one just started a game for an SEC team. One dominated in 2 games for an ACC team. He is clearly not meant to hold this job. And it was a questionable hire in the first place because he was bad at Colorado. He had 1 really good season, and it's time to just close the book. If this comes to truth, if this ends up being true. But for all of it, there are nowhere near enough positives from his time at Michigan State to keep him around.
I know Elk says that he doesn't trust anything coming from Bert.
He's talking about Brett McMurphy.
I think he's talking about Brett McMurphy.
Yes, I think he's talking about McMurphy.
They admitted to his story. They admitted that they had the conversation with him.
Yep.
I listened to it. Did you listen to the press conference? Because I did. They were asked about him being fired. They said, well, we're going to go down that path, but legally we got to do X, Y, and Z. Right. They admitted to it. Like they flat out admitted to Brett McMurphy's story that because that we're firing him with calls, we got to go through this, and this. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but here's the thing. Let me tell you what the first thing I felt, other than him being a piece of shit with some of this, meaning Mel Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
Is it because he's a piece of shit that you're firing him? Or is it because you don't think your programs are going in the right direction?
Right. That could definitely be part of this that we can point out here, is that the first out that they have that they don't have to. Well, because that's the first thing that's brought up in any of the articles that you read. I read The Athletic, an article there, and that was plugged into the article that you don't have to pay him the remainder of his buyout if he violates moral or has moral wrongdoing, which is, fits this exactly. The first instance, an opportunity that they have, they're going to take it because they're dissatisfied with his performance on the field. I think that that's why they're pushing to move this as quickly as they are. But they should be firing him for being a piece of shit for doing what he did to the victim. But I would be willing to bet that Michigan State's
here's the problem with that, though, Joe. Here's the only problem with that.
Yes.
Is it true?
Which we have to wait to get full certainty.
Correct. So, I mean, in normal society, people aren't suspended. People 9 times out of 10 are suspended with pay.
Right.
Okay. Like, this isn't like we put football coaches and sports in a different light than we do everywhere else in society.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere else in society, you would go to court and you would fight this.
Yes.
Okay. And 9 times out of 10, if you work in at least in a governmental job, which he does, you would technically, because he's employed by Michigan State. I mean, because Joe, here's the problem that I have. The only problem that I have is if he did it, you're right. Fire him, never get hired again. I'm with you. I 1,000%. Okay. The act of what he's being allegedly charged with, is phone sex.
Right.
It's sexual harassment. It's not as okay. I want to paint it. I want to walk down this in a thin line. We got to be very careful in saying fire him because he's a piece of shit when she's saying, okay, one thing and he's saying another. Mm-hmm. Now, Mel Tucker allegedly is coming out and saying that he has evidence that she also was egging this on. That's why they ultimately suspended him without firing him. So, again, I'm just in the camp, and will continue to be in the camp. I don't want to say that he's an outright piece of shit and did something wrong, because, Joe, we don't know, right? Like, we just don't know. And I think that that's fair for her as the victim. I think it's fair for him as the oppressor, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. And I understand the illustration of the situation. I'm curious to see what does end up happening from this. Like, that's kind of my final takeaway, is that like I want to know what that final result is, because right now the evidence that's available is very negatively not in his favor. I want to see what that final result is and what ends up coming of this.
Chris, log off. The only thing is, how does he have text from her in this article, whichever article it was I read? How does Mel Tucker have text from her? And then when she reported all this and turned everything over, texts were missing.
Yeah. We got to figure out what that final decision is.
Well, let me just tell you something before we move on here. Bottom line for me is when there are texts missing and she turned him in, that is a massive red flag when you are covering up evidence.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Just throwing that out there. Now, God willing, and here's the truth. This is, and Joe, I know this is your heart, so I'm just gonna, on the Ruffino and Joe show, if somebody is accused and convicted of sexual harassment, the both of us will link arms with you at the steps of the courthouse and do what we have to do to stop this bullshit. Okay. But I do think that everybody is issued or should be issued a fair trial here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We will fight racism, sexual harassment, all of it. I will be on the front steps with you. Call me. Well, if this were the AYS, I have my phone number right there. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Bottom line. But we have to get to the truth. All right.
Yeah.
Want to move to Texas and Alabama?
Yeah, let's talk football.
We're back.
You're really just trying to hurt me now.
Well, because here's the truth. So in case you missed it, Texas does beat Alabama by 10, 34-24. Jalen, so Joe, let me start off here, okay? Jalen Milroe has to be pulled. How many tweets did I send you last night during that game? By the way, while LSU was playing, saying they got to pull him. Well, he throws 2 picks. They don't pull him. And look, I know you're going to go in on Tommy Rees. I get it. They had multiple times when receivers and running backs were running wide ass open. Texas did not have an answer. You know what the first thought I had when Milroe was missing those wide open receivers? What in the outright hell is Dylan Gabriel going to do? That's what I thought, because I'm like,
good point.
Hey, man, okay, Jalen Milroe can't hit the broadside of a barn, and that's fine. What's Dylan Gabriel going to do if those dudes are wide ass open? That's number one. Number two, if Jalen Milroe's your answer and you won't pull him in the middle of the game, how bad is Ty Simpson? That's
right.
That's number two.
Right.
Final for me is, if you're going to use a quarterback like Jalen Milroe in the dual threat, Joe, last night he had 15 carries, 44 yards, 2.9 yards per carry. Okay. And this entire offseason, we had Alabama fans in the midst of this chat. They would come after us. Well, maybe not you, but they definitely come after me. I blame the loss that Alabama had on 2 people. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Bill O'Brien and Pete Golding. It's their fault that they lost.
Oh, man.
I thought Pete Golding was the problem. I thought Bill O'Brien was the problem.
So perfect. The irony, Blake. The irony of this is so hilariously perfect, because their offense stunk. Their defense was inconsistent. At home, a game that you should have won, you couldn't finish the game. I give a lot of credit. I know that you highlighted all the issues here for Alabama. I give Texas a lot of credit for doing exactly what they needed to do to win this football
Joe,
game.
they got some breaks. The fumbled snap that they don't get possession of, the running back picks up, gets the first down. If Alabama gets a stop there, if Alabama gets a stop there, Joe, we could be talking about a completely different game. Completely different game. That's why everybody's like, oh, Texas this, Texas that. Bullshit. You're a fumbled snap running back picking up the ball and getting the first down away from getting your cheeks clapped by a quarterback that has no business being in there.
Luck was really on their side. Definitely was on their side on certain spots, but their execution on what was most important to win this football game, I mean, it was almost flawless. It wasn't perfect, but it was damn near flawless. They bottled up Jalen Milroe. They played fantastic contain. I really love watching Anthony Hill. That kid
dude's
is
a dude. He's such a dude, man.
A bolt of lightning. He kind of reminds me of Harold Perkins in the way that he's an off-ball linebacker.
He's bigger than Perkins. He's not as fast as Perkins, though.
Right. He can really get after the quarterback, even though he was recruited as an off-ball linebacker. He is going to be fun to watch in his time in Texas.
You going to keep him off ball now?
Right. You got to just line him up and send him to go, man. You got to keep setting him up to succeed, because he was a problem. Caden Proctor could not freaking block him. That was a scary day for that Alabama offensive line. But not only did they bottle up Jalen Milroe, they loaded the box, and they gave up some of those long touchdown receptions, some of those long splash plays throwing the ball, because they
Donnie Mitchell, Xavier Worthy.
Well, no, the other way around. Alabama was able to produce big plays because Texas basically said
some too, but yeah, you're right.
Texas basically said, we know that you're going to make a mistake eventually, so go ahead. We'll give you a couple. We're going to load the damn box. You're not going to be able to run the ball at all. Take your shot. You're going to get 2 of them, but the rest of this game, you're going to throw picks and you're going to make mistakes. And that exactly happened. On the other side of the ball, though, you mentioned Xavier Worthy, Jatavion Sanders, A.D. Mitchell. Quinn Ewers has not been consistent up until this point. And I have said that it felt like a guy whose confidence was rattled. After he suffered that injury, he lacked confidence. This game, he looked very confident. Once he was in rhythm, he was placing the ball exactly where it needed to be.
Okay, calm down.
Wait. Come on. Some of those throws that he made
He
were
threw the ball for
fantastic.
60% completion percentage, and you want to tell me he was darting shit up? No, he was not.
He wasn't perfect, but for the fact that he was 0 for 7 on deep throws against Rice, to completely turn around and connect with Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell the way that he did, man, I give him a lot of credit.
I don't disagree.
He played exactly as he needed to play, and the rest of the season, if he can be accurate on the deep ball, as accurate as he was against Alabama, it is going to be really freaking hard to stop that offense. Because what is difficult to stop is receivers with elite speed and a quarterback who can release the ball as quickly as he can. That is a combination for disaster for a lot of defenses, especially in the Big 12.
I think Sark called a beautiful game, an outright beautiful game. I will give Ewers this. Some of those, there were drops, but he still's around 60% completion percentage. That has not really changed. He did do a lot better throwing the ball down the field. You can't take that away from him, though, Joe. Let's not forget, though. Let's not forget. There were some critical third downs in there, that they got very lucky in. I look at the third down efficiency. Joe, they went 7 of 18 on third down. 7 of 18. That's not good. There are a lot of decisions on third down that Quinn Ewers made that were wrong, and they wind up being incomplete, balls being batted down. Let's not act as if, though, if he gets in that same situation again against a team that has a capable quarterback, things can be different. Now, I don't want to take a lot away from Texas. You're right. Okay, I don't want it to seem like I'm poo-pooing on them. Mm-hmm. They won a game against a really good team. I still think Bama's a good team. I still think they can win 9-10 games. Okay, they just faced a better team than them last night. There's not a lot of teams in the SEC right now that could probably take down Bama, even with Milroe. But like I said, if there's the problem that I have is I walk away from this game more worried about Alabama than Texas being, we're back.
I get that.
They have a massive issue at quarterback. Joe, we come out on here. Well, hold on. We come out on the show. We talk about A&M. Okay, we talk about what they're doing offensively. You talked about Tyler Van Dyke this past week. Mm-hmm. We talk about Jaden Daniels. He gets obliterated. KJ Jefferson. All these quarterbacks get obliterated. Jalen Milroe is everything that Twitter says that he is, to some extent. What all these other quarterbacks are, that's what Jalen Milroe is. The 2 interceptions were as horrible as I can ever remember Alabama quarterback ever making. Ever. That was horrendous quarterback play. He was late on all of his throws. He didn't look like he was in rhythm. He missed wide open receivers. And eventually, that Alabama defense was broke down at the end. That was the most Les Miles type of game that Alabama played that I've ever remember in my life. You cannot come in here today and say Texas looked great here, and here. Third down, they were horrendous. They're one bounce away from Alabama potentially going in and taking another lead, a 10-point lead on them. Joe, Texas looked good. Yes, I will concede that and tell you, yes, they did. Let's not walk away from this and act like Alabama offensively did not look horrendous.
Right. I think it's both things. I think that now that we're talking about this more, I think that it's not one or the other. I really do think that Texas. Let me ask
you this question, and you can answer it.
Okay.
How can it not be when your quarterback played that bad?
Right. That was what I was getting at here, is that it's both sides of the coin here. Texas did exactly what they needed to do to ride momentum into the end of the season. Because again, the rest of their schedule, like their toughest opponents are going to be Oklahoma. It's going to be, I don't know who's totally off the top of my head who's on their schedule, but Oklahoma is going to be one of their hardest opponents. I have them ranked as a top 10 team. They looked a little rough this week against SMU, but that's still one of their hardest remaining games. They don't have any other difficult non-conference opponents. They can do some dangerous things this season. If TCU can run the table and make the college football playoff, Texas can do it too, as long as Sark doesn't do some dumb shit where they go out to play like Texas Tech and Tyler Shuck throws for 400 yards. Because
by the way, gave Oregon everything that they wanted.
Right. He literally could do that if you don't show up ready to play. And it literally happened last year when they should have dominated them
a
couple weeks after the Alabama game last year. But what you're saying about Alabama is completely true. And that's why I was so frustrated in the preseason by picking Alabama to play in the college football playoff, picking them as a top 5 team.
What was that about? You had people making them the national title winners.
All of these generic media folks were putting them as the same team that we're used to seeing because it's Nick Saban and it's Alabama. But if you unpack this roster and you point out the issues that they have, all of them showed up against Texas, a team that historically has not shown up in these games. If that was a normal Alabama team, they would have won that football game.
Joe, let's call it what it is. Let's call it what it is now.
Yeah.
If you go back and rewatch that game, Texas did show up. I can't disagree with that. But in critical crunch time plays on third down, they didn't. Texas didn't show up in critical plays, though. You can't go 5 of 18 or whatever, or 7 of 18 and tell me, oh, well, you look great on third down. Bullshit. The defense is getting off the field. Joe, they gave 2 of those third downs, 2 of them came on that last drive when Texas would go in and score. So spare me that game was, or Texas offensively was kicking their ass all night long. That's not what happened. Jalen Milroe throws 2 interceptions. He continues to get sacked. And here's the biggest thing. We talked about Pete Golding. Alabama fans got on my ass because they were like, well, Blake's from Hammond. Pete Golding's from Hammond. He coached at Blake's alma mater at Southeastern Louisiana. So he's a Pete Golding homer. Joe, they didn't have 1 fucking sack. Not one. And you know what? Yes, I'm going to defend Pete Golding for just a minute. Defensively, in the end, you put a true freshman back there, and what was it, Downs or whatever the kid's name is going to be an amazing player, a fantastic safety. Sark went after his ass all night long and made him make decisions. Joe, stop me if you've heard this before. Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler saying, here comes another bubble screen. That's what they ran all in the first half, and Alabama couldn't stop it. They have a massive issue. I know you want to talk about Tommy Rees. We can do that now. Saban, for the first time in his career, I don't think he's got his head on straight. I really don't. You hire Tommy Rees, who is a average at best offensive coordinator, okay? You hire Kevin Steele, who I don't think called a bad game for the first 3 quarters of that game. His dudes got tired.
He got set up for failure, though, by the offense.
Thank you. And we want to blame Alabama. People want to blame everything else, around Saban. For the first time, maybe ever, they're going to have to look at Saban and tell themselves it's on him.
That is the worst coaching staff that Saban has had, and it
Without
showed up.
Question.
I know that you don't want to take away. I know you don't want to give as much blame to Tommy Rees because Milroe struggled. He had a very bad game.
Milroe being there, Tommy Rees, Joe. I know Tyler Buckner sucks cheeks. I get it. But he saw Jalen Milroe in that spring and said, well, at least I need to get somebody in here that can run my system.
I know that he had no options, but the play calling was so stupid. It was so stupid. Who's
that quarterback?
But I understand that you've got quarterback limitations, but like at the same time, every series was like, run the ball up the middle, and then we're going to take a shot. That was the same crap that he did at Notre Dame, except it wasn't taking shots because they didn't have the threats. It was run the ball up the middle, and then slant to Michael Mayer. That was what they ran every play.
He has the quarterback. What else do you want him to do?
Be a little freaking creative. He's got athletes. He didn't try to get any of those guys in space. He didn't try to do anything.
Joe, they ran a bubble screen and he missed it by 7 yards. What are we talking about here?
What's a damn read option? They didn't run any of that stuff.
They did run read option. They ran multiple bullshit. Go rewatch the game. What are you watching? They ran
the game.
Joe, horseshit. This is how they stopped the read option. They would run it, the RPO behind it. The reason that Milroe would pull it and throw that little slant that would go to God's creation all over the place is because the DN or outside backer would crash down. They would send the safety down behind it. They would eliminate both of them. The DN would crash down. Here comes the safety. Milroe, please run. Remember the bad run that he had? It lost like 5 yards on 3rd and 2. That was a zone read. He made the wrong move. You got a backside slant to Jermaine Burton, a 3rd grader. Hey, Ben, would you have made that throw? Yeah, Daddy. Okay, a 3rd grader would have made that throw.
Again, I'm not disagreeing with you that Milroe played bad. My point is that Tommy Rees deserves just as much blame. He didn't call a good game at all. Again, I said this when he was at Notre Dame, and it happened in this game. Maybe I'm a little bit off base for how much they worked in some option plays. Fine. But my point is, and why he was a bad hire in the first place, is that he has the most predictable play calling. Because
I can't disagree with that.
Same thing, series in and series out. When shit doesn't work and you're an offensive or defensive play caller, you need to eventually, at a certain point in the game, whether it's halftime, before halftime, the 3rd quarter, you got to make a transition and say, you know what? This isn't working. We got to try something different. What was working? Let's turn to some different things. And there was just no effort to do that. I jokingly said that they should run the wing T. They should probably run the goddamn wing T.
That was funny. That was funny.
But in all seriousness, if you can't throw the football, run the goddamn wing T. You've got this big ass offensive line. You've got all these running backs. You're not going to complete any passes. Just run the wing T. Something. I know I'm being a little hyperbolic, but still.
Now, here's the ultimate question. How bad does Ty Simpson stink for them not to turn to him?
I think eventually they're going to. I feel like they're going to.
Well, Joe, they don't have a choice. Like, here's the truth. Mm-hmm. If this were LSU, if this were A&M, if this were Ole Miss, that's where he needs to be is Ole Miss, by the way. Come on. If this were Florida, if this were anybody else, Jalen Milroe would get the time that he deserves to learn and grow. He doesn't have time to learn and grow at Alabama.
No. I think that, and maybe this is our final thought before we get to this next game.
That's fine.
Dylan Lonergan, I really think that if this doesn't work,
they're not putting in Lonergan.
He's been talked up to have been the best guy in the spring and during, or I don't know if he was there in the spring, but during training camp, it was talked up that he was the best guy amongst the quarterbacks. Give him a shot? Something. If none of these guys can do it,
give anybody a shot.
I don't think Buckner or Simpson clearly can't do it if they wouldn't turn to him. I feel like Lonergan is the best guy, and there is stubbornness.
But he's not turning to him either for a reason. This isn't.
Freshman.
Hold on. That's BS. And let me tell you something about Bama fans and Bama media. They will pump sunshine as far as the naked eye can see. That's horseshit now. Now, Lonergan might be able to come in and do some better things in the passing game. Sure. Is he worse than Milroe? I don't think so. But, Joe, they literally played freshman quarterback before. Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts say hello. Hold on.
Tua didn't play till the national championship game, though.
No, that's bullshit. That is complete and utter bullshit. They would kick the shit out of everybody, and at halftime, he'd come in.
Yeah, exactly. They would never start him.
So hold on 1 second. Just stay with me before we move on.
Okay.
You mean to tell me that in a national championship game, you will take the guy that brought you to the dance and put in a true freshman and Tua, who, by the way, didn't really have an amazing half. We remember him because of the throw, right? We remember him. He took a really bad sack. He threw, didn't look fantastic. But you won't pull Jalen Milroe.
That's why I don't think any of those options are worth
Who was the kid when Bama was playing USC that they pulled and put in for Jalen Hurts? The kid wound up going to like the Arizona State or some shit.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. He was really highly sought after recruit, and he sucked.
And they pulled in for Jalen Hurts. And by the way, Jalen Hurts fumbled on that first drive. He comes back and he never looks back. That's BS. Saban's getting and I could go on this for days. And Joe, people were like, "Oh, look, y'all better be scared of Saban." Andy Staples out there saying, "Oh, we should all be scared of Saban because he's giggling at press conferences." No, the Saban that kicks everybody ass is telling the media to suck his toes. Okay. Saban never is that friendly to the media when he's going to have a good team ever. Yeah. All right.
They're cooked.
They're not cooked yet because there's going to be something I'm going to say in this show. Everybody shitting on the SEC right now, rightfully so. They may be down. All I'm going to say is that it's week 2.
Fair.
It's week 2.
It's week 2. I will not disagree with that.
If this continues, yeah, they're down. I don't care that the SEC's down. I just want the team that I cheer for. If the SEC's down, that means we can get to the playoff.
Exactly. Well, I'm not if there's only one team, but still.
Joe, if the SEC's down and your team's not?
No, I'm saying if the SEC's down, that there's probably only going to be one SEC team.
If the SEC is down, they might not lose a game until Bama. LSU won't lose a game until Bama. And are you completely confident LSU going into Bama and Jalen Milroe doing something?
Oh, they're LSU.
Don't say it because every time we say something like that.
All right. I won't. All right. Speaking of the SEC being down, though, man, oof, geez, Texas A&M, geez, what did?
All right, tell me your thoughts.
Okay, so I said this earlier in the show. Yes, I was wrong about Tyler Van Dyke. I watched enough of him in his career to have come to a conclusion. He was an older player. A lot of times older players who make consistent mistakes tend to not outgrow them. He played the game of his life.
Completely.
He has some of the best receivers he's had in his career. That is the best offensive line he has had in his career. That run game is fantastic. I said that coming into the game, that their offensive line has some young pieces, and Francis Malagoa is the best freshman offensive lineman in the country. Credit to Mario Cristobal for getting him and that whole group ready to go. He knows how to coach and get offensive linemen ready. There are a lot of explosive offensive weapons, and on the defensive side of the football, there are a number of first-round picks. Leonard Taylor, Cam Kitchens. I'm high on both of those players. Go check my pre-draft board that I did on my other channel. That performance by that team collectively as a whole was exciting to watch. I think that Miami could do damage in the ACC. And the other thing, too, about this is I was one of the few people that was willing to put Miami high up in the ACC in my power rankings each week. A lot of people were willing to say that they're a back half of the ACC team. I'm going to be willing to be more bullish and put them even higher than that because UNC looked like crap against App State. Still, it's week 2. We need to see how they finish. We need to see how they play against Florida State. I will, though, say this much. I put a lot of onus on Jimbo Fisher in the lack of execution by the team to not take advantage of the critical special teams errors in the beginning of that game, to not take advantage
points on them,
but to not ride that momentum, to be aggressive, to attack, to try and create an even bigger lead. There was no juice. It was soft. The approach by that team had no energy. That Texas A&M team had no energy. So by the end of the game, when you're getting punched in the dick the whole game, there was no energy to fight back. I put all of that on Jimbo Fisher for that performance. I give Miami credit for showing up and completely choking out a team that did not want to play. But Jimbo, it's time to call it quits. It's time to call it quits if you're Texas A&M. They have the money. If Charlie Weiss can get paid for a decade or for however long he did by Notre Dame, they have the money to pay his damn buyout because that team is not going to get where they wanted to get. That team will never become a national championship winning team with Jimbo Fisher as the head coach because they're going to show up like that in every important matchup that they have. You're going to show up and fight against Bama? That's the only game that you'll show up for. Nothing else.
Well, here's the thing, Joe. Are you 1,000% confident that Texas A&M can't beat Bama?
That's a good but okay. If they beat Bama on a down year and they finish with 5-6 wins, which I still think is how they're going to finish, like I predicted at the beginning of the year.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me do hypothetically.
Okay.
The only other do you think they lose to LSU?
I want to say yes, but
okay. Hold on. Just all right.
Okay.
Can they beat Mississippi State?
No. I know my Mississippi State wasn't perfect yesterday, but no, I don't think so.
Okay, well, this point isn't going to where I think it was. I surely think you don't think that they can beat Ole Miss.
Well, I predicted them to go 5-7 before the season, and I blindly kind of bought in.
That team is better offensively. I think if there's one team I will give credit to, it is Miami. Miami did whatever they wanted. Miami out-athleted them. Okay? Without question, Texas A&M got out-athleted with all those 5 stars.
That's my whole point, Blake, is that Texas A&M, their roster is as athletic, if not more athletically talented than Miami. They have all of those guys, and none of them are coached up. That is on your – yes. What? Texas A&M, we talk about this the whole offseason.
But Joe, just because it says – so here's the thing about blue chip ratio and all that shit. It doesn't matter when I can watch the film and say that Miami has more athletes than Texas does. Texas A&M does. Excuse me. Because bottom line is –
it's not a Miami take, though. My point is that Jimbo is not getting any of these guys ready. None of those guys were ready to play in that game.
All right, I'm going to push back a little bit. I do agree with you that this looks really bad on Jimbo. I don't think that they should fire him just yet. If this continues, yeah, okay. If you can't finish out the season, I think I hate when people want to call for a coach not named Mel Tucker, fire him after week 2. Joe, he could run look, this season has more 2007 vibes than I think I can ever remember. All right. You could have teams with multiple losses in divisions, okay, that you haven't ever seen before. Mm-hmm. So let me just say this. Number one, I don't agree with you about they didn't have things ready. Now, here's the thing. Miami ran for 77 yards offensively. 77. They could not run the ball on them. They got shut down. They got bailed out by Tyler Van Dyke, and fantastic play calling. Fantastic play calling. Defensively, they did not have a good enough game plan for Van Dyke. They got pressure on him. They sent blitzes. Van Dyke just picked them apart. But when it was athlete on athlete, that offensive line got pieced apart by a really good defensive line. It shows up in those rushing stats for Miami. I look at Miami and look down the road and say that Miami-Florida State game is a must-watch. A must-watch game, Miami versus Florida State. I still think Florida State's a better team than them.
Yes.
Just want to – look, you had 13 sophomores and 3 freshmen starting yesterday for Texas A&M. How are they going to respond as they continue to grow and get more experience? That would be the question that I would want to know. I do agree with you that Jimbo's got to figure some shit out or they need to fire him. But fire him for who?
I don't know off the top of my head right now who are the best coaching candidates. I mean, like, why wouldn't you go after Deion?
If you say Sonny Dykes, I'm shutting the show off.
No. Why wouldn't you go after Deion Sanders? Like, why wouldn't I do that?
Okay, well, first off, have you ever been to the state of Texas?
I have not. I mean,
Deion will not be the head coach.
He was a Dallas Cowboy. What? He's got ties to Texas.
It's true.
I could totally see that happening. Them firing Jimbo, and then we get an anonymous report that Deion Sanders gets on a plane. Where's he going? Oh, he's going to College Station.
He's not going to Texas A&M. I just can't see it.
I agree. I think that if he went to a Texas school, it would probably.
You know why? Because then he'd have to let Connor Weigman hit the road. And I will tell you this:
True.
Alabama will give that kid $1 million to come to them.
Well, technically, Shedeur Sanders can't transfer again.
He can. He can be a grad transfer. Yes, he can.
He would have. That's assuming he's graduated, though. We don't know.
If JT Daniels can transfer 72 times, Shedeur Sanders can.
I'm just saying that we have to assume that he's graduated.
We're already talking about this guy being fired. I ain't even told you that.
Look, my main point, though, is that loss is so indicative that Texas A&M is never going to figure it out under Jimbo Fisher.
What if Texas A&M fired? This is from MR in the chat. What if Texas A&M fired Jimbo and hired Mike Norvell?
I don't think Mike Norvell leaves.
You're missing his point.
I get the joke. But actually, you know what? That's a good damn point. He left FSU to go to that job is impossible to win in. I don't know why, but it's just a cursed situation.
It is. Here's my thing on the game. I think that Tyler Van Dyke bailed him out. Joe, on 21 completions, he had 374 yards and 5 touchdowns. The little Hispanic kid, what was his name? The wide receiver.
Number 7.
Restrepo.
Yes.
6 catches, 123 yards. Jacoby George. Okay, 3 touchdowns on the day.
That kid's a monster. That kid is ridiculous.
Here's the thing. They out-athleted Texas A&M. I don't think schematically Bobby Petrino called a bad game. I really don't. The first Weigman interception is him falling down. They just got better athletes all across the board. That was the game. Tyler Van Dyke had time to throw. Okay, even though there were 17 pressures, he would step up in the pocket and let that thing rip. They had an amazing game plan. By the way, both coordinators are from the state of Louisiana. But nevertheless, they had amazing game plans, and they out-athleted them all across the board.
But that's the hilarity and the irony, I think, of this game, is that it's not like they were playing like – it's not like I can't – I'm going to get killed for saying this, but it's not like they were playing Notre Dame, which doesn't have the same level of athletes as Miami has. They played a team that has Texas A&M over the past couple of years accumulated the most talented athletes over the past couple of recruiting cycles. And none of those kids have played consistently enough at a high enough level for them to win those important games. That to me is the true exposure game, because playing against Nick Saban, blah, 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 whatever the outcome of that game is, other SEC opponents, blah, blah, blah. You know what? We're going to have time to talk about that eventually. But the exposure in a game where it's supposed to be athlete on athlete, and you've had these kids for longer than Mario Cristobal has, and you can't get those guys ready to go, excited, ready to attack. They looked half asleep. That's what I got.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Miami, I know that they're happy, and I know that they're glad that they beat Texas A&M. They should be. You beat a ranked opponent, but Joe, I am telling you, I continue to. People keep telling me about this offensive line. I don't think you're wrong. Okay, like I don't think that. I think that they have a really good offensive line. But they got pushed around up front against A&M in the running game. Pushed around. If Texas A&M can push them around up front, what in the world do you think Florida State can do?
Yeah, that might be a rude awakening, sadly, for Miami fans. And you guys are probably mad.
And here's the truth. The secondary at Florida State is much better. Jordan Travis is not going to make those mistakes. So we gear up for, when is that game, by the way? When is Miami and Florida State play? That is much watched TV, barring that Miami doesn't slip up or Florida State doesn't.
November 11th.
Oh, God. We got to wait that long?
Man, that could be a really good football game. I'm excited.
Those are the 2 teams in the ACC right now that look to be the best.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen anyone else. Clemson stinks.
North Carolina having a battle with Appalachian State. South Carolina going to get their asses kicked this weekend against Georgia.
I'm out on North Carolina, by the way. I know that's a little sudden, but like, dude, you can't back-to-back years. You can't do that against App State, whatever. We don't need to linger on that. That's just insane.
It looks to be a State or Miami. You know what's funny about this too? I keep seeing Danny Cannell say, "Oh, well, ACC versus the SEC." Bitch, your team wants out of the ACC.
Right.
How can you be bragging about the conference that you're in when your team wants out of it?
We got to settle that down.
Yeah, you better set it. Joe, here's the truth. You better win more than once. You better have more than one good year before you start talking ish. All right. Want to get to, before we get out of here, you want to talk on this Ole Miss and Tulane game?
Yeah.
Ole Miss is in trouble.
Yeah. I think that this game, Ole Miss ends up winning. The final score of this game is it was a 37-20, I believe.
37-20. They put it on them late.
It was really close for most of this game, and not A&M. Ole Miss was down for a period of time. I think that, as what you're saying is, yes, they are in trouble because Tulane kept that game close for most of it without Michael Pratt in the game. I think that
what would have happened if Michael Pratt would have played?
That's my point.
Jesus Christ.
That Tulane team is as good as that Cincinnati team that made the playoff. Like, I really think that they could have won that football game against Ole Miss.
I'm not willing to go there yet.
I don't know, dude. They looked really good without Michael Pratt. And Michael Pratt is good enough that he's going to be like a top 100.
Michael Pratt isn't the storyline to me, though. Michael Pratt being out is a far cry from what that game, what the talking point should be.
The talking point is that Ole Miss can't throw the damn football.
Well, let me defend Jackson Dart to some extent.
It's not his fault. I don't think it's his fault.
It's not his fault. Joe, they got dominated offensively up front.
Yes.
If Pete Golding is still at Alabama, they might have been upset by Tulane.
Yeah.
Seriously, they might have been upset. Quinshon Judkins, had 18 carries for 48 yards, 2.7 yards per game.
That's insane.
Or per carry. They got dominated by Tulane. And what did I tell you? I told you that if this game was close, that those little itsy-bitsy Tulane fans were going to come out and saying, we want to be in a Power 5. And what happened after the game? We deserve to be in the Power 5. We didn't have Michael Pratt. But the truth is, they physically dominated Ole Miss at the point of attack and that offensive line.
Right, and it's kind of funny. We spent the whole offseason talking about Ole Miss's offensive capabilities.
They're not the best team in the league.
We talked about the receivers that were added. We talked about Quinshon Judkins in the run game and even some of their defensive pieces. Like Pete Golding, I give him a lot of credit for how he called that defense because they played really well defensively in this game. But one thing that we overlooked is the offensive line. That offensive line will not match up with LSU. That offensive line, I don't even know if they're going to match up well against Alabama. They could get really hurt by a team that's got a strong defensive line. And as much as we were high on, and I was high on Ole Miss this year, I am very, very worried about them being able to protect Jackson Dart because he's a guy who needs time. Like, he made some good throws. He made some nice plays with his legs. You have to, I don't know how you can fix this. It is going to be a long year if they don't protect him better.
Do you want Daddy to tell you how?
I'm not going to concede the first part of that, but sure, you can tell me how.
Okay, let me pull this back up. Hold on. Tulane. Well, first and foremost, Lane's gonna have to start recruiting better up front. Okay, like they have been so piss poor at development up front. It is alarming. If he is one of the best play callers in the country, he's just going to have to schematically, he's going to have to throw these little quick screens. He's going to have to continue to throw these little quick slants, get the ball out of Jackson Dart's hands, and then later in the game, hopefully that defensive line is worn down and you can run the football. There is no business whatsoever that they should have gone into Ullman come into New Orleans and not being able to run the ball and establish the line of scrimmage? None. Zero. That is in that. I know that they walk away with the 37-20 win. I get all that, whatever. That is embarrassing. That is outright embarrassing. It doesn't matter what team it would have been against. But here's the thing, and I'm going to tell you something. Last year, USC got beat by Tulane, and you said that this team was better. Now, if you're going to say that this team is better and everybody's shitting on the SEC, then you're going to have to give Ole Miss their flowers too now. You can't have your cake and eat it too now.
Well, wait. Nothing I said was. Nothing I said. I'm not.
No business being in the top 10. Then put them in there. Put Ole Miss in there. Then, because if this team is better than the team that they had last year, and they beat Ole Miss, they beat USC. Well, then what does that make Ole Miss?
I think that's kind of part of what I'm getting at here is that I don't want to take too much. I'm digging at Ole Miss and they need to fix stuff, but the best G5 team in the country is Tulane. Like that's the main point that I'm getting at here.
Probably
they are better than last year. They did a decent job in the portal. They only lost 2 important players, Dorian Williams, linebacker, and Tyjae Spears. They kept the rest of that. Like, they've got really good receivers. They got a really good offensive line, some defensive line pieces. I don't know, dude. I think that team is really good. And if they hadn't lost that game, if Michael Pratt plays that game, we might be sitting here talking about them going on some sort of a run and maybe making a little bit of noise the rest of the year.
Yeah, Kai Horton was horrible.
Yeah, people were trying to talk him up. I don't know about that.
Yeah, everybody's like, oh, he played so great. Dog, he went 15 of 37.
That is not a good game.
He was horrible. All right, before we get out of here, anything else stand out to you from this week?
I mean, except for Notre Dame's offense looking really freaking good.
But, of course, that's what you're going to say. You know what stood out to me?
Mm-hmm.
This is back-to-back weeks. Joe Milton in the beginning of a game looked like dog crap.
Dude, that's another one, man. This is like they played Austin Peay. But I'm really not. I wasn't totally bought in on Tennessee, and I was kind of like, let's see what happens here. I'm very wary.
He opened up the game 0 for 8.
He's got no touch. I tried to say that during the offseason. He's got no touch. He's got a huge arm. No touch.
By the way, I know it's one game, but I watched on the Sunday ticket the entire Indianapolis Colts game.
Yes. Dude, Anthony Richardson looked good, man.
He fucking looked good, dude.
For a guy who has no damn clue what he's doing, my man looked good. My man looked stellar. That was a great performance by him for a guy that has just said, they basically just said, Anthony Richardson, just go out there and play ball, man. We'll figure it out. There was no game plan that week.
Taylor.
There was no game plan. It was like, yeah, let's just run the ball.
Yeah,
let's have some fun.
I might be conceding this one, but let's see how this trans. Look, the Colts don't draft bad quarterbacks.
No, Chris Ballard's a good GM. I love it because it's backyard football. It's like,
he looked good, man. I'll admit it. You know what I wanted to do. So look, I have not played PlayStation in a long time. Okay. I'm about to go start me an NFL draft when the kids go to sleep, and I'm going to go do it with the Colts.
Let me know how that goes.
Oh, I'm going to kick everybody's ass.
I'm going to get a text in like a week, and you're going to be like, I traded Anthony Richardson. I started.
I'm not trading him. He's too athletic. And look, I love, you know me, I love quarterbacks that can move.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right. You know what else stood out to me too? I think Ohio State got better offensively. I really do.
35-7 against Youngstown.
Yeah. But Joe, the final score does not indicate how they looked with that first team in the beginning.
All right, I will admit I didn't watch a damn second of that game.
Well, they really took the pedal off the metal on that one.
If that was CJ Stroud, they put up 70.
Shit, more than that.
By the way, I was right about Wazoo.
Oh, yeah.
Cam
Ward.
Ward.
You know what's interesting? That game was 24-22 when I messaged you. I was like, oh, but then the guy that you continue to tell me was not that bad, Tanner Mordecai, sucked.
I'm out on him. I'm out on him. I'm in on the Washington State defensive line. I'm calling it right now. Washington State's defensive line is going to dominate somebody. I think they play Oregon and Washington. They're going to beat one of those teams.
How about this? Here's a stat for your ass. You ready for this? Bo Nix is about to break an all-time starting quarterback or all-time stat for the most starts in college football.
It's easy when you're 45 years old.
He's almost the same age as you.
It's a not. Yeah, he's 24.
How about this?
Sam Hartman's also a year younger than me.
God, dog.
It's weird. It's weird. I know, dude. There's so many records that are never going to get broken, including that Bo Nix one because of COVID.
Very true. All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Y'all have a good one. Peace.
Peace.